Welcome to Blooming Wildwood Homestead. Today I want to talk to you about some canning supplies that you might want to have on hand. I know that we're getting to the end of what is typically considered canning season. However, you may have been just kind of pondering whether or not canning was for you during the course of the summer, and maybe you've been learning a lot more and you want to try your hand at it next year. Now is a great time to go ahead and try and pick up some of the items that you are going to need. With all of the shortages that are happening and how difficult it is to find canning supplies, I would recommend going ahead and trying to find those supplies now. Also, you might know somebody in your life who is interested in getting into canning, and maybe you want to go ahead and purchase some items as a gift for Christmas or birthday, different things like that. I know some of my favorite canning items have either been a birthday present given to me in the summertime, since my birthday's in December, or it could have been a Christmas present to myself, which I have been known to do from time to time. So today I want to talk to you about some things that you definitely need to have, and then some things that are just kind of nice to have on hand. And I hope that that'll give you some ideas of what to look for and what you might want to get as a gift for someone in your family who's getting into homesteading. I will link down below to some Amazon items. However, a lot of my items were not necessarily purchased off Amazon. So definitely pay attention to what kinds of stores you have in your area. You might have a local store that is pretty well known for carrying canning supplies, and that might be someplace that you want to go ahead and check out now that we're kind of getting to the end of the season. Maybe you can find some good deals on some things. I know I've seen a lot of people talk about like Amish stores or different places like that. If you have something like that in your area, you might be able to find some items there as well. And then apparently I use antique items, some of the things that have been passed down from my grandma or from my parents. And so you can even find some items at antique stores that may or may not be reasonably priced. You can kind of check into that yourself, but that might be another option as well. So I'll try and link to some things that are similar to what I'm discussing here, just so that you can see what they're all about. But if you have some place in town that is local and that carries these types of items, definitely shop around, price compare, see what you can find that way. I just want to give you a sense of what might be essential, and of course some things that might be just nice to have. The first section that I want to talk about is canners. You want to go ahead and make sure that you have a hot water bath canner. This is usually where people will start, even if they're brand new to canning and they're just getting into it. Hot water bath canning is fairly simple and is a great place to get your feet wet. There are different kinds of hot water bath canners that you can use. The first one, this guy is more of the traditional style of canner, and it's probably one that if your parents did any canning or grandparents, it's probably the one that they had and that they used the most. It is great for propane stoves or natural gas stoves. You can use it on that kind of surface just fine. However, you'll want to make sure that you don't use it on a glass top. Glass top cooking stoves are not good for canning. A lot of it has to do with the element and the way that it turns on and off. It doesn't keep your pot at a consistent temperature. And so, especially with pressure canning, but also with hot water bath as well, it just is not maintaining that consistent temperature. Plus, with the larger pots, it can also have a tendency to crack your glass. So if you do have a glass top, one of the solutions that I used for that with my pressure canning in particular was I bought an outside camp stove that you can usually find at any of your outdoor stores, and I was able to use that, hook it up to a propane tank, and do my canning outside. And a lot of people that I know who have glass cooktops will do that same thing, and they'll use the camp stove. So this is an option. It is very functional. It only holds 7 jars, regardless of whether they are pint, quart, half pint. you're only going to get 7 in here. So that's one of the downsides to it, but it is fairly cost effective and could be a great canner to get you started. The second canner that I have is the one that I use all the time, and it is an electric canner. The reason why I originally got this canner is because my former house had a glass cooktop, and because of that I couldn't put the canning pot on there, and I didn't want to do all of my hot water bath canning outside. And so I went ahead and got an electric canner, and this was a great option for me. And now that I've moved into a house that has propane, I still use the electric canner just because it saves me stove space. So if I'm trying to do multiple batches of something, it just gives me more room to work at the stove and frees up that space. And it also holds more quarts and pints and half pints than I could get in the traditional canner. I can get 9 quarts in the hot water bath, the electric hot water bath, and I think I had maybe 10 pints and I want to say 12 half pints. I could be wrong on that, but I think it was somewhere close to that. So it, you know, a few more is kind of a nice thing, especially if you're doing a large quantity. It just means that you have fewer batches that you need to run. This is my electric hot water bath canner. A few other nice features. It does have a spigot on the side, so you can have it close to your sink, and it's an easy way to drain out the water if you have a hard time lifting the pot when it's full of water in order to dump it out. So that's kind of a nice feature. I also like the clear canning lid, and so it's easy to be able to see what's going on in there. If you end up with a jar that breaks or something happens, you can see right in the top, which is kind of nice. Whereas the traditional pot is completely covered, and of course you can take the lid off, but it just is nice sometimes to be able to see what's happening inside your canner. The second kind of canner that I want to talk about is a pressure canner. There are a couple of different options for this as well. You can either get one that's just your standard, it holds 7 quarts or pints, and you're able to use that. It's more of the old style, or you can get the one like I have, which is a double decker. So you can only do a single layer of quarts, but you can do a double layer of pints, which means that you're able to get 14 pints in your canner instead of just 7. So this is the pressure canner that I have, and I've used it for quite a while, haven't had any problems with it. The only thing is with the double decker, you do have to be a little more careful on monitoring your temperature and making sure that the pressure stays at the correct amount for the entire time of canning. Again, if you have a propane stove, you can definitely do it indoors, but if you have a glass cooktop, that's where you're going to want to go ahead and do it on a camp stove or something like that outdoors, just so that you can make sure that it stays at that constant temperature. You really don't want to even risk trying to do pressure canning on a glass cooktop. So these are the types of canners. I did see one of the old traditional styles actually at an antique store when I was there looking for something else the other day. So I know that canners are out there. I think it was maybe $57, and I don't know how that compares to a single decker brand new. I'll try and link it down below if I can find it on Amazon, but I was like, well, that's another option if you're looking for a canner. The only thing is, if you're buying one used from a yard sale or from the antique store, you do want to check and make sure that you get the pressure gauge checked on it, just to make sure that it's holding properly and that you're getting the right poundage so that everything is safe when you're doing your canning. Those are the canners that I would recommend. We're going to take a look at a few more items, both essential and nice to haves. How about that? We'll call them that. The next item that I want to share with you is debatable on whether or not it's essential. It really depends on what type of canning you're going to be doing. I have the food strainer here, and this guy is essential if you're going to be making sauce type items. So applesauce, or I use it for tomato sauce. If you want to make chili sauce, spaghetti sauce, any of those kinds of things, you're going to want this type of an item. It's great. I have a nice wooden handled squisher, and there's my actual food strainer. And this is just a great product for making sure that you're able to get everything out of your apples and your tomatoes. If you are getting value from today's video, please don't forget to give it a like and of course subscribe as we're going along. The next item we're going to look at is a heavy duty stock pot. This is something that I had wanted for a long time. I did get started with canning just using a regular pasta pot, and it worked okay. However, the stock pot, I knew I wanted that for two reasons. Well, three reasons. The first reason was my parents had a nice big stock pot, and I absolutely loved how it worked for canning. It was nice and big, and things didn't really scorch as much in it because it had that heavy duty bottom. And so I knew that was something that I wanted to have in my canning, supply. So they actually gifted me this stock pot that I'm going to show you for my birthday. This is one of those summer birthday gifts that I had, and I have used it ever since. It's just been amazing. So this one was purchased from a local store. It's the Germany Mega Cooker Professional, and I don't know that I can find the exact one on Amazon, but I'll try to find one that looks like it might be similar. A couple of benefits to the stock pot. One is that it has a large capacity. So I was able to do a quadruple batch of my salsa, and everything fit into the pot. I did some tomato sauce and was able to put 22.5 pounds plus some other ingredients. 22.5 pounds of tomatoes plus some other ingredients in here, and so everything fit in here really, really well. It also has the heavy duty bottom on it, and because the bottom is thicker and a little bit heavier duty, it does help to prevent things from scorching, which is essential when you're trying to do canning. You don't want to have a big batch of something in your pot, and then because you weren't stirring it frequently enough, or because you couldn't quite get the spoon under there, you end up with some of your stuff scorching on the bottom. And so having that heavier duty stock pot can really help with that and can help prevent that. So it's not something you have to get started, but if you want to level up your canning game, I would definitely recommend that you have a good quality stock pot to be able to use for that project. The next pot that I'm going to show you is kind of my tried and true. It's been around the block for a while. This is actually a pasta cooker, and so it's not designed for canning. However, I have used it in my canning frequently. What I love about it is that it has the strainer portion which detaches. So I can use this pot for parboiling. I've done that with my tomatoes, and it's really easy to use it back and forth. I've also used it for cooking potatoes with the skins on or whatnot. I can go ahead and drain it off really easily. They do make specific containers just for parboiling, but I don't have a huge kitchen, and I'm a big fan of finding pieces or different kitchen equipment that you can use for more than one thing. If you can only use it for one thing, it just takes up a lot more space, and then you have to find another place to store it, and it just becomes burdensome. But with this being a pasta cooker, I can use it all year long for any of my pasta needs, and then also during canning season, it works great for parboiling and taking care of some of those projects that I'm trying to work on. All right, next up, we're gonna look at some smaller items. Some are essential, some are, it's nice to have. The jar lifter. this is an essential tool. You must have one of these to be able to get your jars, your hot jars, out of the boiling water. This is essential. You'll use it all the time. Definitely need this tool for your canning. Another tool that is nice to have but is not essential would be the lid lifter. So this has a magnetic end on it, and this is able to grab your lids out of the hot water so that you can put them onto your jars, and it just makes it easier than trying to pick the lids out with your fingers and burning them every time. That really annoys me. So I like using this tool. Not essential, but it sure is nice to have. I think that both of those items come in a set, which I'll link below. And it also has in that set a plastic funnel. And you will want to have a funnel for sure in order to try and keep the rim of your jar clean. So this guy sits on top of the jar, and it just keeps the food going directly into the jar rather than getting all over the place. This is really nice, especially for more fluid items, jam, when you're trying to put it in the jar, or if you have applesauce, things like that, that really have a tendency to be sticky and get stuck around the top of the jars. Using a funnel is really gonna help you with that. So I think the set comes with a plastic one. I don't have that plastic funnel anymore because, you know, again, not essential, but stainless steel is where it's at if you have the option, and I definitely prefer to use that over plastic. The next item is technically not essential, but it has been a life changer for me, and this is the canning scoop. I love the design of the canning scoop. It's easy to be able to pour things in from the side. You can pour things in from the top. It has this nice little lip so that it can sit on the edge of your pan or on the edge of your pot. So if you're trying to rearrange some items and you don't want to have to set this down on your counter or something like that, you can just clip it onto the edge of your pot and it will stay there and everything stays nice and clean. Again, I like to use items for more than one thing. I don't have a ladle at my house, and I use my canning scoop for soup all throughout the year, or if I make maybe some apple cider or something in the crock pot, I use this as well. So, you know, I use it for things that it's not necessarily intended for, but I do love it, and it has been a game changer, and I would highly recommend that for anyone interested in canning. The last item, I debated on whether or not to include it in this video, but I decided I would go ahead and do that. The last item is my Christmas present to myself this year, because I've been really struggling with knives. If you've watched any of my videos on canning this year, you might have noticed that the quality of the knife was not really there. I've had the knives that I was using for quite a while, probably, I don't know, since at least 2006. So I've had them for quite a while, and they're not really sharpening the way that they need to. So I went ahead and invested in this set. It is a beautiful set. Hopefully you can see how nice that is. These knives are the Damascus steel. They are extremely sharp and are just amazing knives to be able to use. There's nothing more annoying than trying to do a large batch of canning and your knife is not even cutting through the tomato, and it was really irking me and getting under my skin, and so that's why I decided to invest in it. Again, not an essential, but it might be if you want to make sure that your tools are good. So this is pretty small and it fits nicely on the counter. I'm not a big one for leaving stuff out on the counter, but I think it's really beautiful and it just sits on the counter really nicely. And I'll let you kind of see. It's just a beautiful knife, very, very sharp, works really well. And I'm kind of excited for next canning season so that I can use my knives a lot more. I'll be doing some future videos with apples, so you'll get to see a little bit of how those work. But I thought I would share that with you. Having a good knife can be a game changer when you're trying to do a lot of food preservation. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Maybe you got some ideas of some gifts that you could give to somebody in your family who is into canning. Maybe there's something that you might want to invest in yourself as you're moving forward in your canning experience and canning process. Let me know down below in the comments, is there something that I didn't show here that you really enjoy using for your canning projects? I always like hearing about new gadgets or new tools that are helpful in this process. So let me know in the comments below. And then if today's content was valuable to you, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And I can't wait to see you back here next time. Bye everyone.